Good morning, everybody. As at 8 p.m. last night, there were 10 cases of community transmission in New South Wales. 9 of those you'd already been made aware of yesterday. The 10th one is an additional person that attended that party where the worker from Bondi Junction also attended. So they are the 10 cases to 8 p.m. last night. Unfortunately, since 8 p.m. last night, New South Wales has recorded an additional 13 cases of community transmission, 8 of which were at that same party. So yesterday we mentioned a party which was attended by a worker from Bondi Junction. That party had an additional case to 8 p.m. last night and 8 additional cases from 8 p.m. till now. The 9th person out of that 13 was a patient in the waiting room of the case that we mentioned yesterday, and there are 4 cases under investigation, but all are in close proximity to the southeast Sydney cluster, and Dr. Chant will provide further detail on those. Clearly, this is an evolving situation we would have preferred not occurred, but given what has occurred, the New South Wales Government will be taking action today to limit the spread of what is a very contagious variant of COVID. I do want to firstly thank the more than 44,000 people that were tested at 8 p.m. last night. That is a good result. We've jumped up from 28,000 the previous day, and I want to thank everybody for listening to the messages, for isolating when they had to. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank our contact tracers. Can I say that our contact tracing has been outstanding, and the contact tracing is not the reason why we'll be imposing additional restrictions. It's because this variant of COVID is causing transmission in very fleeting exchanges, and obviously given the number of people who've been in isolation or otherwise who've contracted the disease means we need to take further action. So from 4 p.m. today, obviously we want to make these restrictions immediate. So if you're able to apply these restrictions, do so immediately, but obviously compliance will be happening from 4 p.m. today. The following restrictions apply to everybody living in Sydney, Blue Mountain, Central Coast, Wollongong and Shellharbour. Importantly, we don't want more than 5 visitors to any household. That includes children. So please don't welcome any more than 5 visitors into your household, including children. We know it's a difficult time given school holidays. And I should also say at the outset that these restrictions that we're announcing today will be in place from 4 p.m. today for an additional week. So obviously we had said that the mask wearing restrictions had to be in place for another week until Wednesday midnight. This will now apply to these restrictions that I'm announcing today. So no more than 5 visitors per household, including children. At hospitality venues, no vertical consumption. All people must be seated wherever you are at any setting. We do not want mingling. Mingling will mean transferring the virus. So please make sure all consumption at hospitality venues or otherwise or at events has to be seated and with good social distancing. Now, obviously, no singing or dancing at any venue except for weddings, which we will allow 20 people on the dance floor at any given time, but no dancing or singing, whether it's a place of worship, whether it's a nightclub, whether it's anywhere else, but for weddings. So clearly no more than 20 people on the dance floor at a wedding. We will be reverting to the 1 per 4 square metre rule during this time, and we know that will have an impact on family gatherings like funerals or weddings, but these are the measures we have to take charge of now so that we don't have to do anything more severe down the track. So what we're putting in place now is in a bid to prevent us having to take further action. Now, if there's a major outdoor event like a sporting event or another organised event, we will be recommending only 50% capacity. So if there's a stadium where there's a major event on over the weekend or in the next week, we're recommending only 50% capacity, and that will be in the health orders. We also want to make sure that there's more wide mask wearing. So obviously if you're at any indoor setting, including a workplace, including Parliament House, except if you're speaking, you should be wearing a mask. So we are going to extend mask wearing to indoor settings like workplaces, and we already had them in place for a number of venues which we announced yesterday. Now, if you're going to an organised event, like an outdoor sporting event or an outdoor concert or some type of other event, in addition to the 50% capacity, we also want you to wear a mask at those events. So if you're going to a sporting event, there's likely to be cheering and shouting and whatever else, given how contagious the virus is, we want you to be wearing a mask at those events. Also, obviously, the exception is if you're eating or drinking, and that's applied throughout. Now, gym classes will be limited to 20 people, but you do have to wear a mask. So some people might choose not to attend those gym classes. We want to not have a bigger impact than we need to, but gym classes are limited to 20 and you must wear a mask. And as for public transport, it's back to the green dots. So the green dots are still there. We kept them in place, fortunately, so make sure you're wearing a mask on public transport and make sure you wear those green dots. Now, importantly, if you live or work in those 7 LGAs that we had described earlier in the week, so I don't live in one of those LGAs, but I work in one of those LGAs, you cannot travel beyond metropolitan Sydney. So if you live or work in those 7 LGAs, which includes all of us, you cannot travel outside metropolitan Sydney, unless it's essential. So unless you're going to visit a relative in care, or unless you have to go for work. So unless it's essential travel, you should not be going outside metropolitan Sydney for the next week. And we apologise in advance that this does impact some people's ability to travel during the school holidays. But these measures mean that we don't have to go further at this stage. So we're not going to restrict people's movement or what they do, but we are going to restrict, if you live or work in those 7 LGAs, you shouldn't go beyond metropolitan Sydney unless it's absolutely essential. Now, these, as I said, these changes or restrictions will be made effective immediately with compliance from 4 p.m. And I appreciate there may be categories or specific areas we haven't covered in this press conference. Please follow the health orders. What is really important at this stage is for all of our citizens to be aware of the basic things we've put in place, and we trust our citizens to follow everything we've put in place, and we also trust people to exercise common sense. Please abandon non-essential activities. Please don't attend social gatherings unless you absolutely have to. We appreciate that beyond these health orders, people might treat their vulnerable friends and family even more strictly than what we've advocated. But we also, please, essentially in the next week, we don't want people moving around unless it's essential. But obviously, we are advocating at the same time, you can attend hospitality venues, you can do all those things you have in place, but these rules, these stringent rules will be in place to make sure we prevent the spread of the virus. And as I said, on this occasion, our contact tracing has been better than I've ever seen. But what we haven't seen before is the contagiousness of this variant of the virus. It is extremely contagious, and the fleeting exchanges, not even physical touching, has meant people have transferred the virus. So I'll ask Dr Chant now to go through the specifics of the cases I outlined, and then Minister Hazzard will make some comments, and then we'll take questions. But can I please stress that's important for our citizens to get these basic messages. If there are specific categories or situations we haven't covered in this press conference, they will be covered by the health orders at 4 p.m. But I think people get the general message about what we're advocating at this stage. So if you're going to work in your workplace, even if it's indoors, wear a mask. If you're going to an outdoor organised event, we will want you to wear a mask. But obviously, if you're in your car or you're just walking down the street or getting exercise, that's not required for those situations. So Dr Chant will now go through the various cases on top of what I've outlined. Minister Hazzard will make some comments, and then we'll open it up to questions. Thank you.
So I might just take you through as a recap of the cases over the last day, and also describe some of the issues that are causing us concern at the moment. So there were 10 locally acquired cases to 8 p.m. last night, and there were 3 new cases. So the vast majority of those cases yesterday were pleasingly in isolation for the full infectious period. However, we've had 2 cases yesterday that were not. So that was the 9-year-old child that attends the St Charles Catholic Primary School. And also we've had a gentleman in his 30s, and he attended the birthday party. In terms of the cases today, we had 13 locally acquired cases were reported after the 8 p.m. cut-off last night. 8 of these cases were linked to the birthday party in West Hoxton, attended by the previously reported case, so the worker at Bondi Junction. So just to describe the sequence of events so you can understand how quickly transmission is occurring. That party and gathering occurred. There were about 30 people in that gathering in a house. The person was obviously infectious at the time, unknowingly, did not have symptoms at that time, was unaware, had not attended any venues. In that evening, then went and got tested when they developed symptoms the next day, and we got the result on the Monday. Immediately, people were asked to isolate, and then we've got the tests that have been coming in associated with that. And what you can see is that those test results indicate how rapidly the virus was transmitted in that circumstance. We've got 10 cases from that party, and that's on day two after the exposure. So the event happened on Monday, and those individuals were tested on Tuesday. And remember, there is a period where they would not have been infectious on the Sunday, but all of those individuals would have unknowingly had the infection for periods of Monday, and that's why contact tracing is occurring related to a number of their movements. In addition, we've had one close contact of another previously known case, and that person's been in isolation for the full period. But then we've also had 4 overnight cases that we are urgently investigating. We know that all either reside or work in the southeastern Sydney area, so that does give us some comfort about the geographical spread of it. But what it means is that there is clearly cases that have been unrecognised in that area. And I know the symptoms of COVID can be incredibly mild and some people can be asymptomatic, and hence we've wanted to call out and get those high testing numbers. Can I thank everyone for those high testing numbers? That's been essential. And if we were to get on top of this outbreak, though, maintaining those high testing numbers is going to be critical, as well as following the public health orders. I just wanted to reiterate some advice, particularly in relation to Westfield's Bondi Junction. We've asked anyone who has attended from the 12th to the 18th of June to get tested, and we're specific, and that includes the car park, and particularly at the Fitness First there at any time between the 12th of June and 18th of June to get tested for COVID. It is critical. We have had a case that has frequented that facility, and it is important that we detect any crossover that may have occurred there given the nature of the transmission. There's also, New South Wales Health is asking anyone who attended the Wallabies Thai restaurant in Mascot between the 19th of June, between 11:30am and 12pm, sitting inside or outside, to please ring the contact tracing on 1800 943 553. If we could also ask people to isolate whilst they're getting onto the contact tracers so they can get the specific advice related to their circumstances. So in summary, we've moved from having our cases all in isolation to unlinked cases. So in relation to the 9-year-old child, to date, we have not identified a source, but testing is underway. So it's not the usual source that could have been a household contact at this stage. All the other household members have tested negative. So our investigations into that case are continuing. So the cause for concern is that we have had people infectious in the community unknowingly. The party's obviously led to a number of infections, but can I thank the response in southwestern Sydney, the cooperation of those businesses impacted, and we're confident that if people could be alert to the website, we can bring that risk and threat under control. Our major focus is in this southeastern Sydney broad area, including the CBD, to make sure that we have picked up any unrecognised transmission. There's obviously been some strains of transmission that have had the ability to amplify, and we need those high testing rates and everyone to follow the public health advice. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Chan. Last Saturday, I indicated that what we knew about this Delta virus and the transmission at Westfield at Bondi Junction could be described as a near and present danger when we were in the vicinity of the virus. I think now what we've seen just in the last week or so is the numbers have gone from basically our first case to more than 30 cases very quickly. And obviously you just heard that we've had 13 cases since 8 p.m. last night. What I would say to our community is we've gone from that near and present danger to a very real and present danger, not just in a shopping centre, but right across Sydney.
New South Wales Health Minister Brad Hazzard speaking there in Sydney about the Delta variant of the coronavirus, which has really increased the eastern suburbs cluster significantly overnight. 13 new cases reported since 8 p.m. last night. Of course, the New South Wales Premier announcing a raft of new restrictions for Greater Sydney. I'll have all of those details in the news for you at 11:30, guys.
Thanks for that.